man doesn't start to fall apart because of one big moment. It begins when he starts smiling at the things he should have walked away from. You weren't broken by war. You didn't fall because of poverty. She didn't even break you. You broke the moment you started lowering your standards just to keep a woman who no longer feared losing you. Confucius once said, "The gentleman understands what is moral. The small man understands what is profitable." But today, most men understand neither. They're not chasing character. They're not chasing purpose. They're chasing chaos. Chaos that wears perfume and pride like it's a crown. And they call it love. But Confucius would have called it the beginning of collapse. Now let's be clear. He wasn't a relationship coach. He wasn't tweeting catchy lines for clout. He was a man who understood that when the home falls, the nation follows. And it usually starts with the silence of a man who won't speak up in the face of feminine disorder. You think you've been patient. You think you've been loving. But really, you've just been scared. Scared to lead. Scared to leave. Scared to admit that the woman you love has no self-control. And if she has no discipline, she cannot love you. Because real love isn't indulgence. It's restraint. Committed to something higher. They told you to find someone beautiful. But Confucius warned, virtue does not stand alone. He who practices it will have neighbors. Translation: a woman with virtue builds community. An undisciplined one? She doesn't gather neighbors, she gathers victims. She'll demand everything, offer nothing, accuse constantly, but never reflect. She thrives where there are no expectations, and the longer you let her stay, the more she erodes the man you were meant to become. Her danger doesn't lie in her femininity. It lies in her immunity from consequence. It's not about her body. It's about her resistance to being corrected. It's not independence. It's outright defiance toward order. This is the kind of woman who turns every boundary into an insult, who thinks patience equals permission, who will leave you emotionally gutted, smiling for photos, dying inside. Confucius believed everything noble begins in the heart of the individual, and everything ruinous begins when that heart stays silent to avoid conflict. He said, "To see what is right and not do it is want of courage." So, let me ask you, when she screamed at you in public and you stayed quiet, was that love or fear? When she dressed for attention and called it empowerment, and you swallowed your instincts, was that support or surrender? There's a kind of woman every man should fear, not because she's dangerous in the obvious ways, but because she's subtle. She doesn't come with warning labels. She shows up with beauty that muffles your common sense, with trauma repackaged as personality, with tears that don't stop, and empathy that never starts. But her real gift is making you feel like the villain just for asking her to grow. That's the woman Confucius feared, not because she was evil, but because she was untouchable. Untouchable by culture, by principle, by any man who still believes in peace. She's not corrected, she's celebrated, not held accountable, just free. She's not dangerous like a weapon, she's dangerous like a mirror. Because the moment you see her clearly, you see who you became in order to keep her. And Confucius would say, that isn't love. That's the slow death of your masculine soul, hidden beneath a mask of commitment. See, there's a quiet kind of erosion that happens to men. Not a loud breakdown, a drip, a slow leak, bit by bit, moment by moment, until the man who used to walk like a king now tiptoes around his own home like a tenant. Confucius warned, He who does not investigate the foundation will have trouble with the structure. So what's the modern man building on? Attention, lust, fake loyalty, carefully cropped screenshots of fake smiles, covering up 1,000 private humiliations. He builds on emotion, without discipline, on passion, without principles, and when the whole thing falls apart, he's left crying, not realizing the structure was never stable to begin with. You thought that the woman who excited you must be your soulmate. You mistook the rush of chaos for the pulse of destiny. But here's the truth, brother. The woman who can't regulate herself will eventually regulate you, not through wisdom, not through love, but through fear, guilt, and emotional fatigue. She'll wear you down by the hour, and when you're empty, she'll look at you and say, "You've changed." Confucius taught that a noble man cultivates himself for the sake of virtue, not applause. He rises early to strengthen his soul, not to win attention. He speaks not to be heard, but to keep harmony. So ask yourself, what has your pursuit of women like this done to your harmony? When did your home start feeling like a courtroom? When did your voice begin to shake before you even opened your mouth? There is no peace with a woman who hates peace. And let's be real, many of them aren't even at war with you. They're at war with calm, at war with order, at war with expectations. If she has no sense of shame, she's not ready for love. Confucius said, "The beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper name." So, stop calling dysfunction passion. Stop calling rebellion confidence. Stop calling your surrender compromise. The woman every man should fear is not the one who cheats. It's the one who feels superior to correction. She doesn't want leadership. She wants control. She'll call you insecure for having standards, weak for having emotions, and toxic for having boundaries. But listen, standards aren't oppression. They're structure. They're the pillars that protect your mind from her emotional storms. And if you don't set the rules, she will. And her rules are simple. She wins, or you're the villain. There's no middle ground. Either you fold to keep the peace, or you stand your ground and get demonized. No third option exists when you're dealing with someone who sees accountability as abuse. Confucius never said women are the enemy. He said chaos is, and chaos can look like anything, including someone breathtaking. The wise man doesn't blame her for being who she is. He blames himself for expecting peace from a storm. You can't teach a woman who's never been taught how to lose. And modern men, so deprived of softness, have started confusing discipline with cruelty. But hear me, real feminine discipline, that's not cruelty, that's love. Real love doesn't justify bad days with worse behavior. It apologizes quietly, without theatrics. It doesn't need to wear a crown. It just wants to protect the kingdom. But instead, men today are marrying queens of disorder and hoping the palace stays intact. All at once. She does it in whispers, in compromises, in little demands that don't seem like much, until one day you look in the mirror and can't recognize who's looking back. Confucius wouldn't have told you to fight her. He would have told you to fix yourself, because when your standards fall, your suffering rises, and what you tolerate once becomes your future. You weren't meant to be the emotional janitor of someone else's chaos, but modern men wear that role like a badge, thinking patience will earn them love. It won't. It earns them more chaos. Because the woman who lacks self-restraint sees your silence as an invitation, not a boundary. And by the time you realize it, you've spent years managing fires you didn't start, apologizing for asking her to hold the matches. Confucius once said, "If you make a mistake and do not correct it, this is called a mistake." And yet, how many of you keep choosing the same kind of woman, praying the outcome will change? That isn't hope. That's self-betrayal. You say you want peace, but keep entertaining chaos. You say you want love, but settle for survival. You say you want a future, but give your energy to a woman who lives like consequences don't apply to her. And what happens when your needs become inconvenient? She'll call you controlling. She'll call you clingy. She'll weaponize every word you say until you're walking on eggshells in a house you paid for. Brother, that's not partnership. That's spiritual eviction. You're still there, but your soul's already been asked to leave. The woman every man should fear doesn't break things in half. She breaks them subtly. Your focus, your faith, your fire, and worst of all, she'll make you think it's your fault because you're not man enough to handle her chaos. But strength isn't measured by how much dysfunction you can endure. Strength is knowing when enough is enough. The modern man, though, he confuses chaos for character. He's drawn to women who talk about healing, but never stop hurting people, who preach about energy, but never own the energy they bring into a room. She'll throw around words like growth, but can't take a single step toward accountability. And here's where the erosion really starts. You begin to shrink, to fit the space she leaves for you. You stop dreaming. You stop building. You stop being, not because you're weak, but because you've been slowly convinced that strength is selfish. And the moment you ask for anything, she flips the script. Suddenly, you're the problem. Confucius believed in harmony, but not at the cost of truth. He said, the expectations of life depend upon diligence. The mechanic that would perfect his work must first sharpen his tools. You are the tool. Your mind, your heart, your will. But you can't stay sharp while being dulled by a woman who doesn't respect edges. This isn't about control. It's about clarity. It's about knowing what builds you and what breaks you. Because when you make room for the wrong woman, you close the door on your mission. And some of you are so starved of purpose that you've made her your entire purpose. Brother, your purpose isn't her mood. It isn't her approval. It isn't her need for drama just to feel alive. You weren't built to orbit her chaos. You were built to lead, to build, to elevate. But leadership requires one painful thing: the willingness to be alone. You're not afraid of losing her. You're afraid of facing yourself without her. Because if she's not there to distract you, then you might have to deal with the man you've become. But that's where healing starts. That's where power returns. Confucius taught that the superior man is distressed by his own lack of ability, not by the failure of others to recognize his merits. So, stop trying to prove your worth to a woman who has no interest in recognizing it. Start cultivating that worth for yourself, in silence, in solitude, in the small decisions no one sees. Because the woman every man should fear, she's not the one who leaves. It's the one who stays just long enough to rewrite your story without your permission, who turns your ambition into anxiety, who takes your calm and calls it indifference, who takes your assertiveness and calls it abuse. And if you're not grounded, you'll believe her. That's how erosion works. Quietly, over time, until you're apologizing for having boundaries, defending yourself for wanting peace, and begging for the love you once gave without asking. Confucius didn't teach men to become loud. He taught them to become immovable. to be still like a mountain, not reactive, not resentful, just unmoved by anything that doesn't align with truth. So ask yourself, are you standing like a mountain? Or are you dancing like a leaf in her emotional wind? The woman you should fear doesn't storm into your life. She seeps into it. She's the whisper that convinces you to skip the gym, delay your goals, ignore your gut. She's the moment you stop calling your friends, stop leading yourself, stop choosing what's best for you. And it's not because she asked you to, it's because you handed over the pen and let her write your life story in a language you can't even read anymore. But it's not too late. Confucius would tell you, the man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. That's all you need to do, brother. One stone at a time, one standard at a time, one decision, one exit, one boundary, one truth. Start there, because if you don't, she will. She'll keep writing your story, one passive-aggressive sentence at a time. She'll turn your silence into guilt, your kindness into obligation, and your patience into permission. And when you finally speak up, when the volcano inside you erupts after years of swallowing every word, she'll call you unhinged. You were just too much, she'll say. But no one saw what it took to hold it all in. The woman every man should fear doesn't raise her voice. She raises the cost of loving her. She makes you pay in fragments of your peace until you forget what peace ever felt like. And by the time you try to cash out, you realize you're broke, not in money, in spirit. And she'll move on effortlessly because she never built her life around you. You were just a stop on her journey to nowhere. But you'll be left with pieces of yourself scattered across memories you can't even trust anymore. So what now? You rebuild. You learn to trust your gut again. You sharpen your edges. You stop trying to fix what was designed to drain you. You stop believing that love has to hurt to be real. You become the man Confucius was talking about, the one who doesn't chase storms, but prepares for them, the one who doesn't beg for peace, but becomes it, the one who doesn't lose himself in love, but finds out who he really is through it. You start asking better questions. Is she building or breaking? Is she calming or chaotic? Is she adding to my life or subtracting from my soul? Because here's the truth. The woman you fear the most isn't evil. She's just unhealed. But you're not her rehab. You're not her reset button. You're not her emotional sponge. You are a man with a mission. And every minute you spend managing her crisis is a minute stolen from that mission. The woman every man should fear doesn't look dangerous. She looks desirable, but that's the trap. She doesn't need to break you in one blow. She just needs to make you question your worth, one compromise at a time. But there's something she can't take, something she can't touch unless you hand it over. Your standard. Guard it, sharpen it, raise it. Because the moment you drop your standard to make space for her dysfunction is the moment you trade your future for her forgiveness. And when it's all over, when she's gone and you're left alone with the wreckage, remember this. She didn't change. She was always the storm. You were just too busy convincing yourself it was weather you could handle. Confucius said, "To see what is right and not do it is want of courage." You've seen it now. What you do next determines everything.